The bright lights of the Galactic Medical Research Station Nexus Prime hummed softly as Dr. Velthar moved between his examination tables. His blue crystalline skin caught the light as his 4 tentacle arms organized medical instruments with practiced ease. The Quillian doctor had examined hundreds of species in his long career, and today would be no different. Or so he thought. Humans, he muttered to his assistant Dr. Krillnox as they prepared for the arrival of the newest specimens. I have read their basic biology reports. Truly primitive creatures. 2 arms, 2 legs, single heart. How did they even develop space travel with such crude anatomy? Dr. Krillnox, younger and less experienced, nodded quietly. He had learned not to question Velthar's judgments. The older doctor was famous throughout the galaxy for his medical expertise and his ability to classify species quickly and accurately. The doors to the medical base slid open with a soft hiss. 5 humans walked in, led by a tall man in a neat uniform. Kim Tae-ho stepped forward and bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had learned was important when meeting new alien species. Dr. Velthar, Kim said in clear galactic standard language. I am Kim Tae-ho, Human Medical Officer. These are my colleagues. He gestured to the others. Park So-jin, our biochemist. Lee Dong-woo, engineer. Choi Mi-young, pilot. Han Jae-min, psychologist. And Yoon Da-yoon, communication specialist. Velthar barely looked up from his datapad. Yes, remove your clothing and stand on the examination platforms. This will not take long. Park So-jin raised an eyebrow at the doctor's rude tone but said nothing. She had dealt with arrogant scientists before. The humans did as instructed, standing calmly on the glowing examination platforms. Velthar began his scans, and immediately his face showed disgust. Look at this cardiovascular system, he said loudly to his assistant. Single heart, primitive 4-chamber design. Blood moves in simple circles. How inefficient. My people have 3 hearts with backup systems. These creatures must tire quickly. He moved to Lee Dong-woo and waved a scanner over his lungs. Terrible. These lung sacs can only process one type of gas mixture. No adaptation capability. On my world, we can breathe 17 different atmospheric combinations. He shook his head. Pathetic evolution. Choi Mi-young watched the doctor, with growing annoyance. She had served in 3 military campaigns and survived conditions that would kill most beings. But she stayed quiet, following Kim's earlier orders to remain diplomatic. The skeletal structure is worst of all, Velthar continued, scanning Han Jae-min's arm. Hollow bones, like flying creatures but without the ability to fly. So fragile, one impact would shatter them completely. My species has solid bone cores, reinforced with metal deposits. These humans must live in constant fear of injury. Dr. Krillnox took notes dutifully, though he noticed something odd. The humans seemed remarkably calm for creatures who were supposedly so fragile and primitive. They stood straight and relaxed, not showing any signs of the nervousness he usually saw in weaker species. Vel quote. Thar moved to Yoon Da-yoon and scanned her nervous system. Incredible. The neural pathways are so simple. Basic electrical impulses, with no quantum enhancement. Reaction times must be terribly slow. And look at this brain structure, so small. Most of it seems dedicated to something called emotional processing. What a waste of neural tissue. Doctor, Park So-jin said politely, perhaps if you have questions about our biology, I could explain some aspects that might not be clear, from basic scans. Velthar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. What could you possibly tell me about biology that I do not already know? I have studied for over 200 years. I have classified 43 species. Your people have barely left their home system. Kim felt his jaw tighten but forced himself to remain calm. Of course, Doctor. We are here to learn. Indeed you are. Velthar turned to his assistant. Note in the records that humans show classic signs of primitive evolution. Poor adaptation to environmental stress, weak physical structure, limited cognitive capacity. They will require significant genetic enhancement before they can participate in any serious galactic activities. He walked around the group one more time, pointing out what he saw as flaws. Single-layer skin provides no protection from radiation or temperature changes, no natural armor plating, no toxic glands for defense, no redundant organ systems for survival. Honestly, how did natural selection allow such weak creatures to develop intelligence? Li Dongwu spoke for the first time. Doctor, with respect, humans have survived in many different environments on our world, from frozen ice caps to burning deserts. We adapt quite well. Adapt? Velthar's voice was mocking. You mean you use primitive tools and clothing to compensate for biological failures. True adaptation happens at the cellular level. Your species shows no sign of such evolution. Han Jae-min exchanged a look with the others. As a psychologist, he could see that the doctor's arrogance was deeply rooted. Velthar genuinely believed what he was saying, which made him even more dangerous. Arrogant people who were wrong could cause serious problems. The pain tolerance levels must be extremely low, Velthar continued, making more notes. Simple nervous system design means every injury would cause maximum suffering. These creatures probably cannot function with even minor damage. Choi Mi-young almost smiled at that comment. She had once flown a damaged fighter ship for 6 hours with a broken rib and a dislocated shoulder, but she kept her expression neutral. Doctor, Kim said carefully, what comes next in your examination process? Velthar finally looked directly at the humans, his large eyes filled with professional boredom. Stress testing, of course. We must document exact failure points for the Galactic Medical Database, pain thresholds, endurance limits, psychological, breaking points, standard procedure for primitive species. He turned to his assistant. Prepare the basic stress chambers. Start with low-intensity tests. Given their obvious biological limitations, I expect complete failure within the first few minutes. We should have all the data we need by this afternoon. Dr. Krillnox began setting up the equipment, but he glanced nervously at the humans. Something about them made him uncomfortable, though he could not say what. They stood too still, too ready, like predators waiting. Any questions before we begin? Velthar asked, already turning away. Just one, Kim said quietly. What happens if your tests are wrong? Velthar paused and looked back with amusement. Wrong? My dear primitive creature, I have been studying biology since before your species discovered fire. My tests are never wrong. He gestured toward the testing chambers. But please, prove me wrong if you can. It would be most entertaining. The humans walked toward the testing area calmly, their faces showing no fear or worry. Park So-jin whispered to the others, he has no idea what he's dealing with. Kim nodded grimly. He's about to find out. The testing chamber hummed with energy as Dr. Velthar activated the gravitational stress simulator. He stood behind a protective barrier, watching through thick, transparent walls as Kim Tae-ho was strapped into the testing chair. The machine was designed to slowly increase gravitational force to find the breaking point of different species. We will start at 2 times normal gravity, Velthar announced to his recording device. Most primitive species begin showing serious distress at this level. I expect the human specimen to lose consciousness within minutes. Kim felt the weight press down on his body as the machine activated. 2 gravities felt like someone sitting on his chest, but it was nothing compared to the high G training he had done in military flight school. He kept his breathing steady and his expression calm. Dr. Krillnox monitored the readings with growing confusion. Doctor, his heart rate is elevated but stable. No signs of distress in brain activity. Impossible, Velthar muttered. Increase to 3 gravities. The pressure increased. Kim felt it in his bones now, but he had experienced worse during emergency combat maneuvers. He focused on breathing techniques he had learned years ago. In the observation area, Park So-jin watched with professional interest, taking mental notes on how the alien equipment measured human responses. Still stable, Krillnox reported. Sir, should we continue? Velthar's crystalline skin darkened with annoyance. Of course we continue. The equipment must need calibration, increase to 4 gravities. At 4 times Earth gravity, most untrained, humans would pass out. But Kim was not most humans. Years of military training had pushed his body far beyond normal limits. He gritted his teeth and held on, watching Velthar's shocked expression through the observation window. "This is highly irregular," the doctor muttered. 5 gravities. Kim's vision started to blur at the edges, but he remained conscious. His heart pounded, but it kept beating. The gravitational force felt like a massive weight crushing down on him, but he had learned long ago that the mind could overcome the body's first instincts to quit. 6 gravities. Velthar's voice was getting higher with frustration. At 6 gravities, Kim finally reached his limit. His consciousness faded, but even then, his vital signs remained surprisingly strong. When the test ended and normal gravity returned, he woke up within seconds and sat up on his own. "How do you feel?" Dr. Krillnox asked, genuinely concerned. Kim stretched his neck and smiled slightly. "Like I need some water and maybe a snack. What's next?" Velthar stared at him in disbelief. Most species would need hours to recover from such a test. This human was asking what came next as if nothing had happened. "Bring in the next specimen," he ordered coldly. "We will test respiratory capacity." Li Dongwu entered the chamber and was connected to an atmospheric control system. The test would gradually reduce oxygen levels to find the point where brain function began to fail. Velthar was confident this primitive respiratory system would fail quickly. "Normal atmospheric oxygen for your species is 21%, Velthar announced. "We will reduce this slowly. Most species show cognitive impairment at 18%. The oxygen level dropped. Li felt the change but showed no immediate distress. As a marathon runner, he was used to his body operating efficiently with limited oxygen. At high altitudes during training runs, he had learned to maintain performance even when breathing was difficult. 15%, Velthar called out. "Any dizziness or confusion?" "I feel fine," Li replied, and meant it. His breathing had deepened automatically, and his heart rate had adjusted to pump oxygen more efficiently. Years of endurance training had taught his body to adapt quickly to changing conditions. 12%. The doctor's voice showed clear frustration now. Li was starting to feel the effects, but he remained alert and functional. In the observation area, Choi Mi-young nodded approvingly. Military pilots trained for emergency situations where oxygen systems failed. 12% was challenging but not impossible. 10% oxygen, Velthar announced grimly. This should cause immediate cognitive failure. Li's head was spinning now, but he forced himself to concentrate. He thought about his longest marathon, the one where he had pushed through exhaustion and pain to finish in first place. Pain was just weakness leaving the body, his old coach had always said. "Can you solve this simple math problem?" Dr. Krillnox asked, showing Li a basic equation. Li looked at the numbers, fighting through the mental fog. 43, he said, after a moment. The answer was correct. Velthar's face showed complete bewilderment. 8%, he said desperately. At 8% oxygen, Li finally began to lose consciousness, but even then he remained awake longer than the computer models predicted. When normal atmosphere returned, he recovered within minutes and walked out of the chamber under his own power. "Impossible readings," Velthar muttered to his assistant. "The equipment must be malfunctioning. Set up the pain tolerance test." Choi Mi-young entered the testing area next. The pain simulation device would send carefully controlled electrical impulses through her nervous system, increasing in intensity until she reached her breaking point. Velthar expected quick results from such a primitive nervous system. "We start with level 1, he announced. "This produces mild discomfort in most species." Choi felt a slight tingling sensation. Having survived military combat training, including resistance to torture techniques, she found the sensation almost pleasant compared to some experiences in her past. "Level 3, Velthar said, skipping ahead impatiently. The sensation became more noticeable, like a strong electrical shock, but Choi's expression remained unchanged. She had been trained to compartmentalize pain, to function despite physical discomfort. Her face showed only calm attention. Level 7. Now the pain was significant, shooting through her arms and legs like fire. But Choi had experienced real fire during a crash landing on a hostile world. This was just electricity. She breathed slowly and let the pain wash over her without fighting it. Dr. Krillnox checked his instruments repeatedly. Doctor, her brain is registering the pain clearly, but her stress responses are minimal. Her heart rate is barely elevated. Level 10, maximum setting. The pain was intense now, like being struck by lightning repeatedly. Choi's muscles tensed, involuntarily, but she made no sound. In her mind, she recited the names of fallen comrades, using their memory to give her strength. Pain was temporary. Honor was forever. How is this possible? Velthar demanded. No species can remain conscious at level 10. But Choi was not just conscious. She was alert, aware, and when the test ended, she looked directly at the doctor, through the observation window. Is that all? She asked calmly. Vel quote. There stood in stunned silence. His instruments clearly showed that the pain levels had been extreme, but the human had endured them with barely any visible reaction. Everything he thought he knew about primitive biology was being challenged. Dr. Krillnox said quietly, perhaps we should reconsider our initial assessments. No, Velthar snapped. These readings are impossible. The equipment is clearly damaged. We will run more tests tomorrow with properly calibrated instruments. But as the humans left the testing area, talking quietly among themselves and showing no signs of the trauma that such tests usually caused, Dr. Krillnox began to wonder if the equipment was fine. Maybe their understanding of human biology was what needed to be recalibrated. In the corridor, Kim gathered his team together. How is everyone feeling? Like we just had a light workout, Park So-jin replied with a slight smile. The doctor seems frustrated, Han Jaemin observed. His worldview is being challenged. That makes him dangerous. Kim nodded. Tomorrow will probably be worse. He won't accept that he was wrong easily. Let him bring worse, Choi said quietly. We have been through real hell. This is just a game. Dr. Velthar had not slept well. The impossible test results from the previous day haunted his thoughts. He arrived at the medical bay early, double-checking every instrument and running full diagnostic tests on all equipment. Everything showed perfect calibration. The instruments are functioning properly, Dr. Krillnox reported quietly. All readings from yesterday appear to be accurate. Impossible, Velthar muttered for the 100th time. No species can perform at those levels, with such primitive biology. Today we will use more advanced tests, real stress scenarios that will reveal the truth about these creatures. The humans arrived on schedule, looking rested and ready. Park So-jin carried a small bag with what appeared to be snacks and drinks. They acted more like people going to a routine medical checkup than specimens about to undergo extreme testing. Today we test healing responses, Velthar announced coldly. We will create controlled injuries and monitor recovery rates. This will finally prove that human biology is as primitive as it appears. He led Han Jaemin to a medical chair and activated a precise laser cutting device. We will make a small incision on your arm. Most species require several hours to show any healing response. The laser made a clean cut about 2 inches long on Han's forearm. Blood welled up immediately, but Han showed no reaction beyond mild interest in the procedure. Fascinating, Park So-jin said, watching the monitors. Doctor, are you recording cellular activity at the wound site? Velthar glanced at her with annoyance. Of course I am recording. What would you know about cellular biology? I have studied biochemistry for 15 years, Park replied calmly. I notice your scanners are detecting increased white blood cell activity at the wound site within seconds. That is remarkably fast immune response. Dr. Krillnox checked his instruments. She is correct, Doctor. The healing response began almost immediately. Velthar stared at the readings. Most species took at least an hour to show significant immune system activation. The human's body had responded within 30 seconds. Check the wound visually, he ordered. Krill. Knox examined Han's arm carefully. Doctor, the bleeding has already slowed significantly, and the edges of the cut appear to be pulling together? Han looked down at his arm with mild interest. Yes, that is normal for humans. We heal fairly quickly from small injuries. Define quickly, Velthar demanded. This will probably close completely within a day or two, Han replied casually. Larger wounds take longer depending on how serious they are. Velthar's face darkened with confusion and growing anger. Bring the pathogen samples, he ordered his assistant. We will test immune system response to foreign biological agents. A containment unit was brought forward containing samples of bacteria and viruses from various worlds. These pathogens were known to cause serious illness in most galactic species. We will introduce a mild sample of Rigelian fever virus, Velthar announced. This causes severe illness lasting several weeks in most species. It should overwhelm a primitive immune system completely. Yunda-un volunteered for this test. The virus was introduced through a controlled injection. Within minutes, the monitoring equipment began showing immune system activity that made Dr. Krill Knox gasp in amazement. Doctor, her white blood cell count is increasing at an incredible rate. T-cells are mobilizing throughout her entire system. This level of immune response should not be possible. Yoon felt slightly warm and tired, similar to the beginning of a common cold, but she remained alert and functional. In her bag, she had packed some basic medicines from Earth, including immune system supplements that would help her body fight off any infection. How do you feel? Velthar asked, clearly expecting her to be showing severe symptoms. A little tired, Yoon admitted, but nothing serious. My immune system is probably adapting to the new pathogen. Human bodies are quite good at fighting off infections. Adapting? Velthar's voice rose in pitch. Immune systems do not adapt in real time. They require weeks or months to develop proper responses to new pathogens. But the monitors showed exactly that. Yoon's immune system was rapidly analyzing the foreign virus and developing targeted responses. Within hours, her body temperature had returned to normal, and her energy levels were back to baseline. This is medically impossible, Velthar declared. No known species can fight off Rigelian fever this quickly. Doctor, Park Sojin said politely, perhaps human immune systems work differently than you expect. We evolved on a world with many dangerous diseases. Our bodies learn to respond quickly to threats. Velthar turned to glare at her. You know nothing about evolution or immune system development. I will prove that this is all equipment malfunction. He activated the psychological stress testing system. This will finally break these primitive minds, he muttered to himself. Mental resilience always fails before physical resilience. Li Dongwu was placed in a sensory deprivation chamber designed to cause severe psychological distress. The chamber would bombard him with disturbing images, sounds, and sensations, meant to break down mental defenses. Most species reach psychological breaking point within 2 hours, Velthar announced. Some last as long as 4 hours before complete mental collapse. But Li had experienced war. He had seen friends die in combat, had survived months in hostile territory with limited supplies and constant threat of death. The chamber's artificial horrors seemed almost peaceful, compared to real memories of battle. After 6 hours, Li was still mentally stable. The psychological torture devices designed to break the minds of the galaxy's toughest species had no effect on him. He passed the time by mentally reviewing engineering problems and planning modifications to his personal spacecraft. Impossible, Velthar whispered, staring at the brain activity monitors. His mental state is actually calmer than when he entered the chamber. Dr. Krillnox had stopped taking notes. He was simply staring in amazement at readings that challenged everything he had learned about biology and psychology. When Li emerged from the chamber after 8 hours, he stretched casually and asked, "Do you have anything to eat? I worked up an appetite in there." Velthar felt his carefully constructed understanding of the universe cracking around him. "Bring all the specimens together," he ordered desperately. "We will conduct the ultimate test. Multi-system stress analysis under extreme conditions. Doctor? Dr. Krillnock said quietly, perhaps we should consider that our initial assessments were incorrect. No. Velthar's voice echoed through the medical bay. I have classified 43 species. I know primitive biology when I see it. These readings must be wrong. But as he prepared for what he intended to be the final, definitive test, a small part of his mind began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he had encountered something entirely new in galactic biology. The humans gathered together, checking on each other's condition and quietly sharing food and water. They moved like a coordinated team, each looking out for the other's welfare. This behavior puzzled Dr. Krillnock even more than their physical resilience. Doctor, he said hesitantly, in all your studies, have you ever seen specimens who become more cooperative under stress? Velthar paused in his preparations. No, he admitted reluctantly. Most species become more selfish and desperate when threatened. Why do you ask? Krillnock gestured toward the humans. Look at them. Every test has made them work together more effectively. They are sharing resources, providing emotional support, planning as a group. It is as if stress makes them stronger, as a unit. Velthar looked at the humans with new eyes. They were indeed acting in ways that contradicted everything he knew about species behavior under extreme stress. Instead of breaking down individually, they were forming a stronger collective unit. Tomorrow, he said grimly, we will subject all of them to simultaneous maximum stress. That will finally prove what they really are. Dr. Velthar stood before the most advanced testing chamber on the station. The multi-system stress analyzer was designed to push test subjects beyond the absolute limits of known biology. It had never been used on living specimens because no known species could survive its effects. Today we discover the truth, he announced to Dr. Krillnock and several other medical staff who had gathered to witness what they expected to be either a breakthrough or a tragedy. This chamber will subject all 5 specimens to simultaneous gravitational stress, atmospheric toxins, radiation exposure, extreme temperatures, and psychological warfare. No living thing has ever survived more than minutes in this environment. The humans entered the chamber calmly. Kim Tae-ho looked around at the ominous equipment and nodded to his team. Remember your training. We have survived worse than this. We survived together. Park So-jin checked her small bag of supplies one last time. She had brought water, energy bars, and basic medical supplies. Everyone take a glucose tablet now. We will need the energy. The chamber sealed with a heavy thud. Velthar activated the first system, and gravity began increasing rapidly. Within minutes, the force reached 4 times normal Earth gravity. The humans felt the crushing weight, but braced themselves against the walls and each other. Atmospheric. Contamination beginning, Velthar announced. Toxic gases began flowing into the chamber, chemicals that should have caused immediate respiratory distress and organ failure. Choi Mi-young felt her lungs burning, but controlled her breathing carefully. Years of flight training had taught her to function in damaged aircraft with compromised life support systems. Breathe shallow, she instructed the others. Save oxygen. Our bodies will adapt. The radiation exposure began next, invisible but deadly energy that should have started breaking down cellular structure immediately. Han Jae-min felt nauseated but forced himself to remain calm. Focus on each other, not on the sensations, he told the group, using psychological techniques he had learned for treating trauma patients. Temperature dropping to sub-zero levels, Velthar reported, his voice tight with anticipation. The chamber became bitterly cold, then blazing hot, then cold again in rapid cycles designed to shock biological systems into shutdown. Lee Dong-woo began shivering, but pulled the team closer together. Body heat, he said simply. They formed a tight circle, sharing warmth and supporting each other against the crushing gravity. The psychological warfare system activated last, filling the chamber with disturbing sounds, flashing lights, and subliminal images designed to cause mental breakdown. The cacophony was overwhelming. A deliberate assault on sanity itself. Yoon Da-eun closed her eyes and began singing softly in Korean, a traditional song her grandmother had taught her. The others joined in, their voices barely audible over the chaos but providing an anchor of humanity in the mechanical hell around them. Dr. Krillnock stared at his monitoring equipment in disbelief. Doctor, they should have died within the first few minutes. It has been half an hour, and they are still conscious and coordinated. Velthar watched through the observation window as the humans maintained their tight formation, supporting each other physically and emotionally. Their vital signs showed extreme stress, but they remained functional. More than functional, they were adapting. Increase all parameters by 50%, he ordered desperately. The chamber became even more hellish. Gravity increased to levels that should have crushed bone. The toxic atmosphere became thick enough to see. Radiation levels climbed toward lethal doses. Temperature swings became more violent and unpredictable. But something remarkable was happening inside the chamber. Instead of breaking down, the humans were entering what they called survival mode. Their bodies began producing chemical cocktails that should not have existed. Natural painkillers, immune system boosters, metabolic enhancers. Kim felt his body changing, adapting in real time to the threats around them. His heart rate slowed and became more efficient. His lungs began processing the toxic air more effectively. Years of military training had taught him that the human body could do impossible things when survival was at stake. "How are we doing?" he asked the others, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Alive," Park replied, and managed a weak smile. Her scientific mind was fascinated by what was happening to their bodies. The stress was triggering biological responses that she had only read about in theoretical papers. Still here, Choi confirmed. Her pilot training had prepared her for emergency situations where everything went wrong at once. This was just another emergency to survive. Holding together, Lee said, adjusting their formation to better support everyone's weight against the crushing gravity. Ready for more, Han added, his psychologist training helping him maintain group morale even under impossible conditions. "Singing helps," Yoon said, and started another verse of the traditional song. Outside the chamber, the medical staff watched in stunned silence. Dr. Krillnox had stopped taking notes and was simply staring. "Doctor, this is impossible. The radiation alone should have killed them an hour ago." Velthar's face was a mask of confusion and growing fear. Everything he had believed about biology was crumbling before his eyes. "Maximum settings," he whispered. "Everything at maximum." The chamber became a vision of hell. Gravity reached crushing levels. The atmosphere became pure poison. Radiation spiked to doses that would sterilize planets. Temperature swings became violent enough to shatter metal. The psychological assault reached intensities designed to drive entire populations insane. And still, the humans endured. They were no longer just surviving. They were thriving in ways that defied all known science. Their bodies had become living laboratories of adaptation, developing responses to threats in real time. Their minds had achieved a state of calm focus that turned suffering into strength. "Water," Park said, passing around her bottles carefully. Even in extremis, they shared resources equally. "Food," Lee added, breaking energy bars into precise portions for each team member. "Stories," Han suggested. "Tell us about home. Keep our minds focused on good things." Kim began describing his childhood village in Korea, the mountains and rivers that had shaped his early life. The others added their own memories, creating a mental refuge in the midst of physical hell. They were doing something that no species in galactic history had ever done. They were not just surviving impossible conditions, they were maintaining their humanity while doing it. 6 hours, Dr. Krillnox reported in a whisper. They have been in maximum stress conditions for 6 hours. No known species can survive more than minutes at these levels. Velthar stood frozen, watching displays that showed impossible readings. The humans were still conscious, still coordinated, still taking care of each other. Their biological systems were operating in ways that his medical training said were impossible. "Doctor," one of the other medical staff said quietly, "perhaps we should end the test." We may be witnessing something unprecedented in galactic biology. But Velthar could not accept what he was seeing. His entire career, his reputation, his understanding of the universe, everything was being challenged by 5 specimens who refused to die when they should have died inside the chamber. The humans continued their quiet songs and shared their stories. They had found something stronger than individual survival instinct. They had found collective purpose. They would live through this because they had each other, and because giving up was not in their nature. How much longer? Yoon asked softly. As long as it takes, Kim replied. We are human, we endure. The chamber fell silent as Dr. Velthar finally shut down all the testing systems. For 12 hours, the humans had endured conditions that should have killed any known life form within minutes. As the doors opened and normal atmosphere flowed, the 5 humans helped each other stand and walked out under their own power. Dr. Velthar stood motionless, staring at readings that would haunt him for the rest of his career. Every instrument confirmed the same impossible truth. The humans had not only survived the ultimate stress test, but their biological systems had actually improved during the ordeal. Doctor? Dr. Krillnock said quietly, his voice filled with, "Oh, the final readings are complete. Would you like me to prepare the report?" Velthar's tentacles trembled as he reached for the data pad. The numbers were beyond his comprehension. Human cardiovascular efficiency had increased by 40% during the test. Their immune systems had developed resistances to 17 different toxins in real time. Their neural activity showed enhanced coordination rather than breakdown under extreme stress. Impossible, he whispered. But the word had lost all meaning. Kim Tae-ho approached the observation window, his uniform torn but his bearing straight and proud. Doctor, we are ready for your next test whenever you are. The casual offer broke something in Velthar's mind. These creatures had just survived 12 hours of conditions designed to kill gods, and they were volunteering for more. There will be no more tests, Velthar said, his voice barely audible. Park. Sojin stepped forward, still carrying her small bag of supplies. Despite everything they had endured, she had continued to share water and food with the others throughout the ordeal. Doctor, would you like me to explain what happened to our biology during the test? I think I understand what your instruments recorded. Dr. Krillnox looked at his mentor with growing concern. Velthar seemed to be in shock, unable to process what he had witnessed. Please, the younger doctor said to Park, help us understand. Park smiled gently and moved to the data displays. Human biology is not designed for comfort, Doctor. It is designed for survival against impossible odds. When you subjected us to extreme stress, you activated evolutionary responses that have been built into our species over millions of years. She pointed to the cardiovascular readings. Our hearts did not just pump blood. They began producing emergency hormones and distributing resources more efficiently to vital organs. What you saw as primitive single-heart design is actually an optimized system for crisis management. Lee Dongwoo joined the explanation. Our bone structure adapted to the gravitational stress by increasing calcium density in real time. What appeared fragile to your scans is actually a composite biological material stronger than most metals when it needs to be. Choi Mi-young gestured to the respiratory data. Our lungs did not just process your toxic atmosphere. They began filtering and neutralizing poisons while extracting maximum oxygen from minimal clean air. Adaptation, not just endurance. Han Jae-min addressed the psychological measurements. Human minds are not designed to break under pressure. We are designed to find hope in hopeless situations, to maintain purpose when everything seems lost. Stress makes us more cooperative, not less. Yoon smiled at the communication recordings. And we never face threats alone. Human pack bonding means that individual survival becomes group survival. We become stronger together, not weaker. Dr. Velthar listened to their explanations with growing amazement. Every aspect of human biology that he had mocked as primitive was actually sophisticated beyond his understanding. Your immune systems, he said slowly. They developed new resistances during the test, in real time. That should take generations of evolution. Human immune systems are adaptive learning machines, Park explained patiently. We evolved on a world where diseases could appear and spread rapidly. Our bodies learned to improvise solutions quickly, or our species would have died out long ago. Dr. Krillnox was taking frantic notes. The pain tolerance levels you demonstrated, how is that possible? Pain is information, Choi replied simply. Important information that tells us about damage, but not something that stops us from functioning. We feel pain completely, but we do not let it control us. Velthar's worldview was crumbling and rebuilding itself simultaneously. The healing rates, the cellular regeneration speeds. Battlefield medicine, Kim said quietly. Humans who could not heal quickly from injuries did not survive to pass on their genes. Natural selection favored rapid recovery systems. For long minutes, the medical bay was silent except for the soft humming of instruments. Dr. Velthar stared at the humans with new eyes, seeing not primitive specimens but the products of evolutionary pressures beyond his imagination. I must make a formal report to the Galactic Medical Council, he said finally. I will have to admit that my initial assessment was completely wrong. Doctor, Kim said gently, we understand that this challenges your scientific understanding. We do not want to embarrass you or damage your reputation. Belthar looked at him with surprise. After everything he had put them through, they were concerned about his professional standing. Your concern for my reputation, even after how I treated you, only proves that I was wrong about everything, Belthar said. You are not primitive creatures. You are the most sophisticated biological systems I have ever encountered. He turned to Dr. Krillnox. Prepare a full report. Include everything. The Galactic Medical Council must know that we have encountered a new classification of biological resilience. Over the following days, Velthar's report sent shockwaves through the galactic scientific community. Humans were reclassified as a Class A survival species, the highest rating ever given. Research stations across the galaxy requested human volunteers for their most dangerous missions. Kim Taeho was promoted to head the first Human Emergency Response Team, a special unit for rescue operations in conditions too dangerous for other species. Park Seo-jin's research on adaptive biology revolutionized medical science throughout the galaxy. The others became leaders in their respective fields, proving that human resilience extended far beyond physical survival. Dr. Velthar became humanity's strongest advocate in the galactic community. At scientific conferences, he would often conclude his presentations by saying, I thought I was examining specimens. I discovered I was meeting legends. When asked about his dramatic change of opinion, he would smile and say, any scientist can admit when they are wrong. It takes wisdom to recognize when you have discovered something wonderful. The humans, for their part, continued to do what humans do best. They survived, they adapted, they took care of each other, and they never gave up. They had proven that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in being the biggest or the smartest, but in being absolutely, unshakably, determined to keep going no matter what the universe throws at you. In the end, Dr. Velthar learned that evolution does not always favor the obvious strengths. Sometimes it favors the quiet determination to face tomorrow, no matter how impossible today might seem. And in that regard, humans had no equal in the galaxy.